right, let's get into tonight's agenda. On the back page of today's Courier Mail carries a story from Peter Bedell, headline Benny and the Broncos Part 3. You can work out what that means. The column features quotes from Broncos chairman Karl Morris and Rabbitohs coach Wayne Bennett, which would suggest the idea of Bennett returning to the Broncos is not completely off the table. Bennett fronted the media earlier today, and our colleague Lara Pitt had much fun asking some follow-up questions about the story.
Speculative. I've spoken to nobody, said I've made a statement and I'm leaving it at that.
Wayne, you clearly seem frustrated about the Broncos chat. I'm just wondering why you decided to make a statement about it if you don't want it to continue to be discussed.
You don't leave me in a position not to make a statement. I mean, there was a statement made at the other end. I was only responding to that. And again, you know, the thing I've learned in this business, the no comment stuff doesn't work.
But naturally, fans want to know if you'd like to end up back at the Broncos.
Well, you read the statement and you can work it out for yourself from there. And the fans, I've found the fans over a long period of time very patient and understanding.
In the same article, which had your quotes in it, it said that Souths would not stand in your way.
Well, no one at Souths has told me that. That discussion's never been had here. I've had no discussion with anyone about it. It was a speculative piece of journalism.
Have you actually thought about then what you want to do, Wayne? Has it entered your head at all?
If I told you what went through my head and my thoughts, it'll do your head in.
Great performance today from the Supercoach, but help me understand this. Is Wayne cranky because he was being asked questions about a story that he effectively helped write?
The campaign's begun.
Is that how you're reading it?
That's that transparent. Look, of course it is, Ben. Like, Peter Bedell doesn't write a story quoting Wayne Bennett without Wayne knowing the full picture. Okay, Karl Morris is currently the chairman of a club that's in trouble, that needs a way out. Wayne is now potentially a light out of the darkness. So what happens is he sits there and goes, you know what? If getting us out of this trouble means getting Wayne Bennett back into the club, we'll do that. That's what he entertained today.
What struck me was the tone of the statement. It just feels like it's changed. The narrative, the conversation has changed dramatically. It's almost like he's extending an olive branch to the club by saying, I'd be humbled by the fact.
Of course he is, Lara.
But then he says, go back and read the statement, and that tells me he wants to go back there, but he's not willing to say that today, which...
Because he guaranteed South 2 months ago, he was going nowhere.
Well, he told Sam Burgess. Sam Burgess came on this show and said, Wayne has looked me in the eye and he's promised me that he will be at South Sydney next season. He might tell you guys, Paul.
Well, what's changed since then? I'll tell you what's changed since then. The Warriors have appointed a coach, Cowboys have appointed a coach, Dragons have appointed a coach.
And
They're running out of opportunities.
South have definitely changed their tune, because I agree. I've spoken to them a number of times about this for next year, and speaking to Nick Pappas today, it all of a sudden seems like they'd be comfortable with their succession plan.
Fascinating. All right, let's head to Brisbane now, where the Courier Mail's Peter Bedell is standing by. Peter, great to see you as always. Now, in your humble opinion, how likely is it that Wayne Bennett ends up back at the Broncos?
Oh, look, Ben, I still think it is a long shot, isn't it? I mean, the planets have to align here. I think this is part of the problem for Wayne Bennett. If he was off contract right now and he was a free agent next season, I think he would be at the Broncos next year. But a bit like Bellamy, who has always been off contract at the wrong time when the Broncos have wanted to pursue him, Wayne Bennett has another 12 months at South, and now they're going on a run to the finals. They're building momentum, and Wayne Bennett doesn't want to destabilise the South Sydney train. So, look, I can understand the predicament that Wayne's in. He loves the Broncos. He cares about the club. And I know, having put this story together, having gone to Karl Morris first, the chairman, having then gone to Wayne Bennett for a retort, there is some feeling on both sides they would like to make this happen. But Wayne Bennett would need some certainty about running the football department at the Broncos. He doesn't want interference from the board. But whether it happens in the fullness of time, Ben, I don't know. But Paul White was the big impediment here as the CEO. He leaves in a couple of months, and that was Wayne's big beef. He had an issue with Paul White. He's now out of the picture, so don't rule this out completely just yet.
Pete, was this story, when you first came up with it and decided to go to Karl Morris and then Wayne Bennett, did it hatch out of a conversation previously with Wayne Bennett?
No, so this is the honest story here, Kenty. I did a big Sunday story with Karl Morris about the state of the Broncos, and it was my question to Karl. I said, Karl, would you consider Wayne Bennett coming back to the club to help rebuild this club? He's won 6 premierships. He knows the DNA of the club. Surely you have to consider Wayne Bennett in some capacity, possibly as a coaching director. That's when Karl Morris gave me those quotes. As a courtesy to Wayne Bennett, I called Wayne yesterday and I said, Wayne, this is the quotes from Karl Morris. I read them to him and I said, Wayne, I think you deserve a right of reply, and I'm duty bound to give you those quotes from Karl Morris. And he responded with a statement which he ratified before I ran it in the paper. So he was aware the story was coming. So was Karl Morris. And here we are today, Kenty. But I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before there is some clear picture about what happens moving forward for Wayne Bennett and the Broncos.
So if Wayne was so happy to speak to you, why was he so cranky today and didn't want to answer questions today and address the topic today?
Well, I raised that with him, Kenty, before I went to print, and I think he was cognizant of the fact that the story in itself would create a lot of discussion. And as I said before, he doesn't want to create an inferno at a time when South Sydney are on a run to the finals. He wants to get the job done with South first. That's his priority. But he couldn't dodge the fact that Karl Morris was very complimentary in his statements about him rather than inflammatory, complimentary. And I think Wayne, in his heart, if Kevy Walters gets the job, PK, which I believe he will, as head coach at the Broncos, Wayne feels that he could be a sounding board for Kevy and take the external pressure off him somewhat, handling the media, running the football department and letting Kevy get on with business as a rookie coach at the Broncos. So that could yet be an alliance for the club.
All right, Peter, you've brought up the fact that Kevy is likely to get the head coaching role at the Broncos. How far progressed is the search?
Still some while away, Ben. I'm thinking that there'll be a resolution around mid-October, possibly late October, even into November. So I spoke to Karl Morris yesterday, the chairman. He suggested that they'd like to get the CEO bedded down first, marginally ahead of the coaching announcement. So at this stage, they've only started the process this week, Ben, about casting the net wide. I think that net will ultimately be tightened to Paul Green and Kevin Walters, but I know there are some concerns from the Broncos about the way things ended for Paul Green at the Cowboys. There were concerns about his man management there and whether he'd lost the group, and I think that could count against Paul Green in the end. I think Kevin Walters will get the job.
All right, Peter, thank you as always. We'll chat next week.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.
All right, let's discuss this at the desk. So Wayne Bennett appears to be happy to make a public statement in the form of what would appear to be an olive branch to the Broncos about the idea going back. He gives his support to Kevy Walters, which leads us to think that Wayne wants to be a coaching director over the top of Kevy, who's not likely to be appointed until mid-October, early November. Did I capture that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you nailed it, Ben. Look, it was such a messy divorce between Wayne and the Broncos when he left a couple of years ago. And I think now, with the benefit of hindsight and in the fullness of time, everybody who was involved in what was a complete shit fight at the time, negative headlines, personal stories, it was a complete mess. And I think now it's time for a little bit of the healing process to begin, and that's what all this is about. I don't think this will happen. I think a third party acting on Wayne's behalf, as much as Wayne can stand in front of the cameras and say, I have not spoken to the Broncos, I think a third party acting on Wayne's behalf has picked up the phone, spoken to people at the club. There is an interest in terms of just trying to smooth some of those wounds over, but I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll be at South next year.
And Lara, you believe that if Wayne did decide that he wanted to depart next year, that South would be okay with it?
I'm not sure that they were at the beginning of the year, but maybe now that they've had a good look at what Jason Demetriou has been able to do this season when Wayne had to have the 2 weeks away, and that the players are probably responding to Jason, they're happy to fast-track that. That's the impression I got. But they were saying that Wayne has not approached them and that he hasn't actually asked for a release from the final year. The sense I got, though, is that they'd be comfortable with the succession plan and that they're ready to go.
This is just deja vu. This all happened in reverse situation 2 years ago. Wayne wanted an extension at Brisbane. He wasn't given that extension. So privately and in certain selected places publicly, he began agitating for an extension. Ended up in the blue there, got out of it. He's doing the same here. He's doing the same thing.
PK, then it got messy and it got personal.
Of course
and it became a battle of egos between Wayne as the coach who's had so much success.
This is the bloke who 3 months ago was going nowhere because it was all a media invention. 3 months ago, he's going nowhere. He's got 1 more year to go at South Sydney. He's going nowhere. It's a media invention. Today, It's an olive branch. He wants to begin the healing.
We all know Wayne's one of the best in the business.
Do we all fall
cameras.
for this? Seriously, do we all fall for it?
So what's going to happen then, Genius?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. I think
but I tell you what, it's not all hunky-dory. Like, you know, it's like let's get in for a big group cuddle. Like, seriously.
It's hunky-dory?
This is the way... he was telling everybody 3 months ago he was going nowhere. And now we're all sitting there going, oh, you know, that's Wayne. He wants to go back to Brisbane. He belongs there. Come on.
I just said he'll be at South next year. I didn't say he's going to go
The one
back.
thing I can't get, if his focus is truly on the South Sydney Rabbitohs making a run towards another premiership, why make a statement at all? I mean, the amount
because
of times...
it's our fault, Ben. It's our fault.
The amount of times across the last 30 years I've heard Wayne Bennett say no comment was all he needed to do to Peter Bedell in this instance.
Without having
particularly
spoken...
in a private conversation and not a press conference situation.
Yeah,
particularly in that situation.
I haven't spoken to Kevy, but if he is the man that Pete Bedell says is going to get the job, why would he want Wayne Bennett overarching his role? He wants to have clean air, have the control of that club. It depends what the role looks like.
I think any coach goes into Brisbane with Wayne Bennett there as the head of football, goes in with concerns that maybe in 2 years' time Wayne says to the joint, look, he's not up to the job. I tell you what, give me 2 years as coach and we'll get another bloke to come in. I'll train him.
I don't think he's 73.
Oh, seriously, like he's 71 now.
I don't think the model works. I mean, hugely successful coaches like Wayne Bennett and/or Phil Gould with big personalities and strong ideas are no chance of playing a supporting role to a head coach. At the end of the day, they cannot help themselves. They were born coaches. They need to interfere. They need to be on the grass. They need to have their fingers in the pie. So if Kevy Walters was the successful candidate as the next Broncos head coach, to think that Wayne Bennett's going to be there in the background would just end up a distraction.
The only way it would have worked is if they went with his original proposal back in 2018, which is what he wanted and what really upset him. He said, Jason Demetrio will be my successor and then I'll go into the director role. It didn't happen, so he's done it for Souths.
Now, speaking of big personalities in rugby